Welcome to Scrub In, a podcast powered by Bayhealth. I am your host, Sarah Beebe.
And I am your co-host, Tyler Cody.
Thank you for joining us as we ask ourselves to scrub in
and talk more about our why behind the healthcare mission. So, hi, good afternoon, Sarah. How are you today?
Good, Tyler. We're back for episode 8.
Episode 8 of Scrub In, a podcast powered by Bayhealth. And today we actually have a guest star, Angeline Dewey. She is currently our Senior Director of Clinical Practice and Professional Development. So she'll be joining us here today to talking about caring for yourself.
Awesome. I love that idea.
Yes.
This is our last episode of 2023.
It is.
We're about to go into the holidays. We're filming this filming and recording this on December 1st. So we are just going into the holidays. And I was thinking about working the holidays because in healthcare, we don't shut down for holidays. Have you liked working holidays?
I actually really enjoyed the holidays that I have worked in the past, only because there's a shared unity among the staff.
I agree.
So everyone has to be there, and you kind of have to just work together to get through the pain of having to work on a holiday. So we used to bring in food. People would bring in little festive items. Accessorizing. It's always been a good time. But at the same time, it is difficult to miss that opportunity to be with your family and friends.
Yeah.
So that's the caveat.
When I worked inpatient, I actually never, I didn't love coming in on holidays, but there were also certain holidays that it was a nice excuse to not have to do all the family craziness that might happen because I had to work or I had to sleep because I had to work or something like that.
Yeah.
And my birthday is the 25th of December, so I always loved having because I worked OB, I loved having babies born on my shift for Christmas. So, because I'm like, I was one of you.
Okay, now I know something new about you.
Yes. So I go a little crazy starting to pretty much Black Friday through January 1st.
As you should.
So I get excited. I actually never minded working the holidays either because I'm like, oh, we get to have babies on my birthday and it'll be great.
You're having a great Christmas at work.
Yep. I always decorated my, had a Christmas badge holder and always wore, whatever I could get away with wearing that was festive.
Yeah.
So,
I tried to get away with the Santa hat many years in a row, but unsuccessful.
But it can be really tough working during the holidays.
Yeah, it can.
So,
because you miss that opportunity to be with family, and it is it's a bummer, but the patients need you too. So.
Yeah. And working the holidays is certainly something that can lead to burnout for clinicians, and that's one of the things that I think we're going to talk about today with our guest.
Absolutely.
Is balance and avoiding burnout.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk through that. I definitely need help in that area.
Yeah, I think we all could use a little assistance there.
Yeah.
So we always like to start our episode off with a quote. So today's quote: "Be there for others, but never leave yourself behind," said by Dodinsky.
I love that. Yeah, awesome. So we're going to welcome our guest, and Angeline Dewey, as Tyler was saying earlier. Welcome, Angel.
Hi, Angel.
Hey, thanks for having me. I see you saved the best for last.
Yes, I know. Last episode of the year.
Yes,
so
we did.
Awesome. So, Angel, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am not a stranger to Bayhealth. I've been at Bayhealth for over 25 years now, and so the majority of my career has been at Bayhealth. I started in adult critical care, have always done adult critical care. I'm a graduate at the University of Delaware, and I worked a couple years at St. Francis Hospital in Wilmington, and then I followed my manager from there down to Bayhealth. She became a director and kind of put my foot in the door, and there we go. So when I started at Bayhealth, the ICU that we have was 8 beds, and that's all there was.
Oh, wow.
So tremendous growth, and that's one of the things I love about Bayhealth, always growing and changing. Yep. So spent a long time in the ICU at the Kent campus, worked with Tyler side by side, many an hour. We got lots of stories. Staff nurse, preceptor, charge nurse. I was the clinical practice leader and then the clinical nurse specialist for a long time. Really enjoyed bringing a lot of quality improvement projects for our critically ill patients, opening neuro ICU, working with some great managers, so lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
But speaking of burnout, you can imagine that over 20 years really takes a toll on somebody.
Yeah.
In any field where you're giving of yourself all the time and seeing patients and their families going through things, it really weighs on you. And so it was most definitely time for a change. I've always loved teaching. I feel that I could really get points across and have a lot of what I call student light bulb moments. Those are my favorite moments.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so when the director of education position came open, I thought, why not? It's time for a pretty significant change, and it was a significant change. Lots of learning. I'm in my 6th year now. I can't even believe that time has flown by. Do I miss ICU? Yeah, no. Being honest, I miss a lot of the people, that I work with during those times. But I know there's a lot of really good care going on up there in the ICU. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, how do you both come from such a high acuity, stressful environment, certainly for the past few years, but it's always been a stressful environment. And so what do you do? Like, how do you go home at night and decompress from that? Like, what do you do for that?
It's when I started orienting people, fresh, 2 years out, probably 1 year out of being a new grad myself, that was a big question, and it's big. And I used to tell people, you have to almost like change the channel. You have to visualize yourself changing a channel. There's you at work and there's you at home, and you have to take time to switch between those channels on your way in and on your way out. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, especially when you've had a tough day. And that's where, stress management and then building your resiliency really comes in. Yeah. And I've been down the burnout road at least twice now that I can truly, fully embrace. Mm-hmm. And coming back out of those types of things, you do feel even stronger. And you have to find it within yourself to make the change, and you have to recognize it as well. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes somebody to tell you, you're burned out.
Yeah.
Because we're invincible. We're nurses. There's nothing wrong with us. And you have to really find ways to handle it and to deal with it. And my biggest suggestion is to find some way to get rid of that excess energy within you. So when you're burned out and you are just so full of stress, think about that fight or flight response that you get. And it's stress that's stuck inside of you. And I know I'm going to say the word that nobody wants to hear, but it's called exercise.
Yeah.
But it is true. And the first time I went through burnout, I thought I was losing my mind. Your thoughts race and you can't ever relax. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start walking. And I just started walking around the neighborhood and stuff. And I felt amazing because it just clears your head. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be said for just that movement, but there's a lot to be said out in nature as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Taking a breath of fresh air.
Yep.
Just breathing it all in for a second.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then, just exercise. It doesn't have to be, running 3 miles. It can get you to that point, but it could be yoga. It could be, dancing. It could be so many things. But people say, oh, I walk enough. Well, I'm at work. You do, but it's not that 30 minutes getting your heart rate up and getting rid of that, that pent up stress. You have to unstick it. You have to get it out.
Yeah. And I like to I always say when I go out for a run that I'm shutting my brain off. I'm not actually shutting. In fact, my brain goes crazy while I'm running, but I'm shutting that piece of my brain off, and I'm just letting it, whatever comes into my head comes in. I think about it for a little bit and then it goes somewhere else. And half the time I can't even remember what I thought of while I was running. But it's great because that's what it feels like you're shutting your brain off for a few minutes, and you can't do that just walking around the hospital.
No. And people think they have to do, you have to start right out. Nothing's more discouraging than starting out an exercise routine or some kind of routine where you're getting rid of exercise and going full out, and then you're so sore and you can't even handle it, and then you're like done. Yeah. So if anything, if you're feeling burnout, just go take that walk around the block, 15 minutes, just walk and see how you feel. And people will be absolutely shocked how much better you feel. If you have animals, go walk those animals, and they love that. And just start somewhere. It doesn't have to be anything big. I was, in that burnout, that first one, and I was overweight and I started walking, but over probably 6 to 9 months, I ended up running, and I started running. Fluffy girl was running, but it felt amazing. I love those, those endorphins that you do get. But again, it doesn't have to be anything big like that. It can just be taking a walk. We have a lot of great parks around now, and we're kind of experiencing some mild weather. So go out to the parks, you get that nature in. There's so many things on social media where you can follow along and do different exercise routines. I don't want to plug anything shamelessly, but any of the video type apps and things like that, there's so many things you can do. It's unlimited, and they're free. That's the best part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Find a partner to help keep up, and make it a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah. If it weren't for my fiance, I would have no initiative to go work out at all.
Do you guys work out together?
We do, yeah. So if it weren't for him, there would be no way that I would be able to motivate myself to go alone. So
that's nice. It's
yeah,
nice
good
to have
the
a buddy.
partnership. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the only way you can do it. So my husband and I did it together. We joined the YMCA, and then we don't go there anymore. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with it, because it was great. It got us on that movement. But like I said, you can do so many things at home, and I don't feel good now if I don't work out.
Yeah.
But it's not just with the working out. I mean, that's great to get the stress out. The other big piece is to how do you build up your resiliency so this doesn't happen again? And one of the things I've learned in the past year, just being transparent, is healthy boundaries are a really big thing.
Yeah.
There are so many resources out on the internet and things to help you really recognize what healthy boundaries are, and it's different for everybody. And who's to say that you have to follow what everybody else is doing? And I think social media pushes that, which is another issue. But you have to define for you, what are your healthy boundaries? What is so important to you, and what's going to fill your bucket? Because at the end of the day, we all have this bucket, and work, stress, all these other things are shooting holes in the bucket, if you will. The water's draining out. So how do you fill that bucket? And part of that is those healthy boundaries. So, on Wednesday nights, I have something I really want to do, and so I have to be out of the office at X time. Or, these are the days that I am committed to doing something, and you have to, hold yourself to it. If you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is. Trust me. And then the second part is you're not going to be good to anybody else. No. Because when you go through that burnout, it has so many other ripple effects as well. I mean, there is solid research to show that when you are burnt out and you are a nurse, any type of clinician, physician, PA, respiratory therapist, all those, it has ripple effects to our patients. Yeah. Solid research. Because we do workarounds, and there's things that are undone and things that you just don't have the energy to do because, for a variety of reasons. And so patients have a longer length of stay. Yeah. You're scared to have that crucial conversation with the family to, push to try to get them out. And so families and patients feel like they don't have good care. Yep. It's all related to healthcare associated infections, conditions, and then even that healthy work environment on a unit. If you have grumpy people who are not happy for whatever reason, and you get this toxic work environment, and then you have huge turnover on the units. And so all these will actually affect our patient care at the end of the day. And it all just goes back to choosing to put yourself first. Yep. I just can't say that enough, because if you don't choose you, nobody else is. Yeah. I mean, what are you saying about yourself if you're not putting yourself first? And nurses are notorious for not taking care of ourselves. We have very poor health habits. Solid research on that. Yep. And we could spend a lot of time talking about that. But so my challenge would be, what are you doing good for yourself? Okay. we know even at work, nurses, we don't take that lunch break. That's not good,
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to, that's a healthy boundary you should carve out for yourself. Take that 10-minute break, walk off the unit, even if it's just to walk around in the halls and clear your head. Put in some healthy boundaries, while you're at work so that you do feel better. People think if they work through their lunch that they'll get caught up. But there's solid research to show that if you do take a lunch break, even if it's just 15 minutes, you're more productive after that. And it's not just a lunch break, it's a meal break, of whatever kind that is.
Right. It's funny. I've said this a couple of times, and I said it after we finished recording a couple of weeks ago, but as an OB nurse, I very rarely took a lunch because I was constantly watching a patient in labor, and you just never knew if they were going to deliver or they delivered right before lunch and then you couldn't take a break or whatever. So that, and then also being a mother, I didn't sit for meals. And so now I eat like I'm in prison. I mean, like I shovel food in and I don't even realize it. And Terry Murphy was giving me a hard time about that. He said that should be the name of a podcast is, I eat like I'm in prison because of because of nursing and motherhood, But it's so true that you don't, that not taking that break, not setting that boundary for yourself has a ripple effect into all kinds of parts of your life, so you don't make healthy choices with your meal because you're eating fast, or you eat too fast and then all of a sudden you're the one sitting at the table while everybody else is enjoying their meal. You're done. And that's no fun. And so it's just, that is a great example of just a small place to start with setting a boundary, because it can have years long effect on you. And so yeah, I love that. Now, what do you say to the nurse or the clinician who you can tell is burned out? So we've all worked with that person that they have either, been in a role too long and don't recognize that they're just not happy anymore, or they're burnout, or how do you have that conversation with somebody to say, something's got to change? Because as you said, it can affect the entire department. It can affect the entire unit if you've got that grumpy person that works with you every day.
It goes to a crucial conversation, and I have unfortunately or fortunately have had that with somebody I'm very close to, and some other people. You have to sit down. You can't have it while you're at work. It's, hey, let's go out and have lunch or breakfast or whatever that is, and just talk about you just don't seem like yourself. What's going on? And that usually just opens the conversation of them starting to recognize, well, maybe there is something going on, and let's talk about it. And it takes you down that road, and what are you doing for yourself? And that usually lends into that conversation. What are you doing for yourself? Because I hear that you're a mom and you're taking your kids everywhere, and you're working nights and you're picking up extra and da da da. So what are you doing for yourself? And hopefully trying to get them to recognize it. It's a mistake to come right out and say, you're burnout. It's a total mistake. You need to get them to recognize that they are not taking care of themselves, and it's obvious to people because of their behaviors, and just having conversation where you have open-ended questions, and not yes or no questions, but getting into it. How are you feeling? You don't seem like yourself. Is there something going on? I really care about you as a friend or a colleague. You just seem different, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on,
Yeah.
Establishing that line of communication, just giving them the opportunity to just tell their story for a minute and explain what's going on. Maybe can assist with that burnout.
Yeah, and everybody has a story. And then sometimes it helps to tell your own story of what you've been through, or maybe somebody's story that you're aware of. Because that's the thing. Everybody thinks they're alone, and there was about 30 to 40% of healthcare workers were burnt out before the pandemic. let's not even talk about now, because it's not just the pandemic, it's where we are as a society now. There's civil unrest, there's a lot of politicalness, there's a lot of things going on internationally, the media, just so much for people to really worry about. And that added on to already a stressful job it's hard for people. It's really hard for people.
And we are constantly connected too. We are always connected with all of those things, all of those stimuli. Like we are just never able to take a moment and just step away from that.
Well, and there's research to support that even though we are so connected, the loneliness data has increased significantly. That even in a world where we are constantly connected, we are more lonely than we ever have been, and that leads to depression and all the other issues. And it's just, I think taking time to go for a 30-minute walk where you shut off your social media or something like that, or that can really at least start to chip away at some of the things that are going on. I agree.
When you have friends say, "Oh, I'm tired. I didn't sleep very well." And I'm like, "What do you?" One of the things I always ask people is, "What are you doing before you go to bed?" And they're all flipping through their phone.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
TikTok.
So you need to get off your phone. 30 minutes at least before you go to bed. It's just like they say that TV's bad for you. You know what I mean? That blue light. It's still blue light. It's still stimulation. But when you're flipping through things on your phone, even when you're reading, it's still blue light exposure. But when you're flipping through apps and things like that, it's stories that are still stimulating your brain. And how do you shut off your brain if you've just heard about this, that, or the other,
When COVID first started, obviously we all had a lot of stressors, but I noticed that I was not sleeping and I was really struggling. And sleep is always the first thing to go for me. And I kept attributing it to, COVID. I'm stressed about COVID. But what I also realized is that I was spending a lot more time on my phone because I was looking up all the news. I was doing that before bed. I was also drinking an extra cup of coffee and probably having an extra glass of wine at night too, because we were home. So what were you doing? And it was amazing cutting those small things out and, not looking at the news after a certain hour during the day, and not, and then also cutting out the extra caffeine and alcohol also helped. But I slept so much better. And it was amazing just that little shift, and also how quickly that little shift came into my life too, just being home a little bit more, or not having as many social outlets, or whatever it was, not exercising as much because we were trying to navigate all that was going on in those early months. It all just so quickly affected mental health and how I was feeling. So yeah.
I know we talked about getting the stress out, which is really important, and it really is about movement. But I do want to go back to talking about how do you keep your bucket kind of full, kind of thing. All right, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And there's so many ways, and I love that you guys start with a quote, because I live on quotes. I have a lot of quotes that I resonate with me, and there are days, because we all have bad days, that before I go into work, I'm reading a quote, to get me going, and just to get through, what it is I need to get through. Because we all have tough days, just being honest. That's really important. But one of the most important things I feel like is finding meaning in your work. How privileged are we that we can help people through some of the most intimate times of their lives. If you're not a healthcare professional or work in a hospital, you have no idea what is going on behind those doors. And it is unbelievable what people go through, what families go through, the turmoil, the decisions they have to make, the chronic health problems that they're dealing with. And we are so privileged to be able to help people through that. Whatever that outcome is, sometimes it's good outcomes, sometimes they're not good outcomes, but at the end of the day, you are helping people through things. And that's my why. helping people through things. I worked with a manager, and she had the best quote on her desk all the time, and it is the secret to life, is that we're here to see each other through, to really help each other through. It's not that you're just seeing each other, it's to see each other through. And that it truly is the secret to life, because think about if nobody helped each other, where would we be?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So finding that purpose, that meaning to your work is so important. And on that drive home, I know you just want to crank out and jam to the music, or maybe you're listening to the podcast right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully.
But just taking a minute to reflect of the good that you have done, because for every one you say that you've done good, I promise you there's probably 20 more for every one you can think of. There's so many little things, and our patients just really appreciate the smallest things because they're really, going through things. And to be able to care for patients and make them feel better is just really amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And, that's why we started this podcast. It wasn't to promote the organization. It wasn't to just jump on the podcast bandwagon. We had focus groups of nurses in our organization probably maybe a year and a half ago. And one thing that echoed through those focus groups was that nurses were disconnected from their why. And, they couldn't always think of why they do what they do, really, truly, because I think we could all come up with an answer. And I thought, this is a shame, because if we all talked, or if we all heard each other's stories, would it help us reconnect? And would it help us to realize that we're not the only ones that maybe are still traumatized by the pandemic, because, the rest of the world has moved on, and healthcare is still seeing numbers, or still getting over the fact, still dealing with that trauma, and, or something else, healthcare provider violence has increased significantly in the past few years, and it's always been there, but it's, it really has increased. And so, we get trauma that way too. And so, but we all went into this for a reason. We all went into healthcare, whether it was nursing or being physicians, or, Terry Murphy became the CEO of a hospital, or, whatever the reason it was that we went into healthcare, we went into it for a reason. And we probably have a lot of shared whys and a lot of shared things. But then also what's beautiful is all of our differences too. And so that's what made us want to do this podcast, is for us to be able to share our stories and connect in that way, and be reminded. I hope that somebody hears something that one of us says on here and goes, that's why I went into nursing too. Cool. Or like, we both played low brass in high school. We've got that connection. Or, there have been so many things that we've heard from different people that it's like, oh, I do that too, or I know somebody that does that, and it brings us back to why we do what we do. And so I love what you had to say, and what a great way to end the season is on resiliency and burnout, and reconnecting to that why. And it's just wonderful, and I just really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
We didn't talk about nursing professional organization involvement.
Oh, that's right. That's true.
And I really did want to talk about that too. And I think that's another way to really help build your resiliency. And that's probably the coolest thing about all healthcare jobs, is that, you can get involved in your professional organization, but when you start to feel burned out, you can turn to your professional organization, or you can pivot in your career. You don't, just because you went into labor and delivery doesn't mean that's what you always have to do. Look at you now. You're, sim woman extraordinaire for Bayhealth. There's just so many different things you can do, but there's so many opportunities in your professional organizations to become involved and still feel like you're making a difference, and it really helps you in your community as well. I have belonged to AACN, Association for Critical Care Nurses, probably for 25 years. And most of the professional organizations allow you to volunteer. You can fill out a volunteer profile, find out about what volunteer opportunities they have, And then they'll start sending you things, and don't be afraid to apply, because you don't know what you can do until you're given the opportunity. And there's so many really cool things you can do to help give back to nursing, to help give back to your community. And then you have local levels of your professional organizations as well, which allows you to give back to your local community. We have a Diamond State chapter of AACN, and they've done, dinners for the Ronald McDonald House. They've done clothing drives. They've, done so many things. But then you can also hold conferences and help expand the knowledge of other nurses that, are in whatever specialty you're in, and network with other hospitals. So I really encourage, especially our newer nurses that we have, because we do have a lot of newer nurses too. If you're in finding a niche, go find a professional organization and join at that national level to really start hearing about what your specialty is talking about, what's the buzz, what kind of things should we be implementing at Bayhealth. And it gives you a different avenue and an outlet besides that direct patient care. It gives you other opportunities to see how you can spread your wings and fly in a different direction.
I agree. And it also connects you to your why.
Yes.
Because working with, connecting with people through your professional organizations, you remember why you chose that area of nursing or that area of medicine or education or business or whatever it is. And it can be so inspiring and uplifting that it recharges you. I know. Yes. I love going to conferences because I love getting excited about the profession again and networking with people. And maybe you're not a person who likes that kind of thing, but so you may read the journal from your organization, or you may you may quietly help with an activity or something like that. But being involved brings you back to why you became, the profession that you are. And so I agree. That's a great addition as well.
They also help, I feel like, validate sometimes how you feel,
Yep.
And the stressors that you might be feeling in that particular specialty at some point. I'm so ingrained in critical care, but there's a lot of other very hard specialties out there. I think of oncology. I mean, that's got to be a tough area as well. And that kind of goes full circle to what we've talked about with burnout and everything. And it's just a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it also, those organizations are also working behind the scenes on policy as well. So joining your organization, if you're an advanced practice provider, those organizations are working on policy at the state and national level to make sure that you've got, different practice rights and things like that. That organization is working on getting funding for different nursing groups or different groups to help with burnout or resiliency. That organization is really fighting for you as that type of clinician or that type of profession. And so not only is it a way to connect internally, but then also they're helping you connect to the bigger world as well. So
they tend to have a lot of tools and resources available for clinicians as well that you can, use for yourself or on your unit to help, with burnout, resiliency, healthy work environment, all these things, empowering you again to make that choice to create change or make change within yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Angel. This was such a pleasure. It was so great to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better, because we see each other in the halls, but it's fun to just sit down and chat.
I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks so much.
I get some great insight on self-care and keeping your...
Absolutely. And some ideas for going into the new year. So keep an eye and an ear out for Scrub In, powered by Bayhealth. In the new year, we'll be starting our second season in January, February, we'll be recording. And so we have enjoyed this first season with everyone. We hope that everybody else has as well. Remember to follow us on all of the social media channels, looking for Bayhealth. And then also we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube.
Thank you to our listeners for an excellent first season.
Can't wait for the next one.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Join us for our next episode by subscribing to this podcast and telling your friends to do the same.
Click plus or follow so you don't miss an episode. Don't forget to keep up with us all on social media channels by following @Bayhealth.
And remember, there is a why behind every healthcare uniform.